Hello people of YouTube, so I have just finished reading my favorite comic book I have ever read so far in my entire life. It is called Batman the Cult. I'm going to let you know why I love this thing so much, but there are very minimal, if any, spoilers. So this is safe. I don't ruin the ending or anything, so if you haven't read it, it's okay to watch this video. But I will be giving maybe light spoilers, if you want to call that. I'm just kind of giving you the gist of the storyline as well as including some pictures. So if you're cool with that, stick around and watch, and I'm going to tell you why this is the best book ever. So I found it in the DC Finest collection, a Death in the Family collection, but it's a standalone book, and I'm recommending the standalone book. The first reason that I'm recommending this is because the artist is Bernie Wrightson, and he has become one of my favorite comic book artists. One of the few that I actually recognize by name. I found him through a comic book with the Incredible Hulk and the Thing from Fantastic Four. It would look like an interesting collab to me, so that's why I picked it up in the first place. But the plot of that book, it's okay, but the art of that book was absolutely beautiful, and it put Bernie Wrightson on my radar. So as far as the Incredible Hulk and the Thing book goes, you can read it if you want. I feel like the plot of that was kind of like, it's shallow, it's a good read, it's just okay. I don't remember much about it, but it's a beautiful looking book. So if that's what you're into, check it out for sure. But if you're looking for a beautiful comic book with a deeper storyline, I recommend Batman the Cult by Jim Starlin, Bernie Wrightson, and Bill Ray. I don't know what each of them did for the book, but all their names are on the cover, so good job, guys. Way to go, team. So the book starts with this real mysterious aura, and the visual storytelling of this book is just god tier. Like, look at this scene of Batman fading in and out of a dream, where reality is crazy, but also his dream was crazy, so it's like he's just going through it. But there's also a good balance between the word part of the story versus the visual part of the story. There are these scenes where it's just like watching the news, basically. And I really appreciate that for two reasons. One, sometimes when I'm reading comic books, going back and forth between looking at the pictures and reading the words and look at the pictures. Sometimes I don't know if I'm supposed to look at the pictures first and then read the words, or if I'm supposed to read the words and then look at the picture. I don't think it really matters, but I think too deep into it. But like when it's just news scenes, you don't even have to worry about the picture because it's like the same picture used over and over again, and you can just read, and that feels calming to my mind. The second reason I really appreciate these news scenes is because it has like a real life kind of aspect of it, where you're hearing about all these horrible things that are going on, but you don't really see it. You just see like the news broadcaster being like, yeah, people are being shot and they are dying out there. And that's real life stuff right there. Like, you hear about things that are going on that are crazy all the time, but like the people that are telling you are just sitting there talking to you like I'm talking to you about this comic book. It's kind of crazy, and that tickles my brain. I like how well that this comic book reflects reality in some ways. In some ways, not all, but some. More than I'm used to in a comic book. So the villain of this story is Deacon Blackfire, and honestly, him as a standalone villain, he's not that interesting. What really interests me is the cult that he made, and then the way the public kind of reacts to that cult and all that kind of stuff. It just really got me thinking in a way that most comic books don't. It got me wondering whose side I would be on if I were a Gotham citizen. Because based on the news coverage and like towards the beginning of the story, all we hear about him is that he housed the homeless. There's no more homeless people sleeping on the streets at night. And also he's getting rid of the criminals. Which, on surface level, that sounds pretty good. And I think at that point, I would be like, you know what? I don't know who this guy is, but like, those are two great things. Thank you. And this is the actual first time I've ever put myself in the shoes of just like the ordinary citizen of a comic book. Normally, I'm not looking that deep into things, but this one really inspired my neurons to start connecting. And I don't remember if the news explicitly said that Blackfire is killing the criminals. I think that just maybe might influence my decision on like if I were to support this dude or not, because I don't really agree with capital punishment and all that. But if I were just the ordinary Gotham citizen and I'm just looking outside and I'm like, you know what, the streets are a safer place, I can't say with certainty which side I would be on. And that kind of spooks me a little bit, because it just shows me that I do have the potential to be on the wrong side of history. And I think we all do. I think it's good to acknowledge that. And another reason I think I might have fallen on the wrong side of history if I were put in that situation is because I'm a bit susceptible to religious messaging. Because listen, I love God, and I'll listen to any message if it's addressed from God. And while I do hope that my discernment is strong enough to be able to spot a counterfeit person, I can't say with absolute certainty that it would. I just don't know, because in the story, it gives you this whole backstory about this guy who was an Indian shaman or whatnot, and he's like been living this whole time in Gotham underneath whatever. He's an old guy, more than old, like centuries old, like supernaturally old, and he's still around. He's like, I've been sent from God to help Gotham. I might fall for it. I might fall for his BS, which is like, dang. I just think it's absolutely crazy that I probably would have fallen for Blackfire's cult even without the starvation and drugs and abuse that he used on Batman to get Batman to fall for it. I would have just fell for it because he said, God sent me. And he's centuries old. And I'm like, okay, that's enough for me. I guess you were a Native American shaman. Who am I to say no to you? Like, I don't know. Something about this just kind of like, it poked at weaknesses I found in myself. Maybe weakness isn't the right word. Maybe it's vulnerabilities. Yeah, vulnerabilities. This really highlighted some vulnerabilities that I have within myself. But enough about me. Let's get back to Batman and the story. Another reason I really like this story is because it's the first time I saw Batman actually lose his wits. Because normally he's Mr. Cool, calm and collected. He's got it going on. He's Mr. Analytical. But then he loses it. Like, he genuinely loses it. But he did put up a good fight, so he still got my respect. Because like I said, I would have started kissing Blackfire's butt the moment he started housing homeless people and reduced the crime rate. So we got to give it to Batman. He's still Batman. And I mean, it's obvious from a comic book point of view that Blackfire's the boogeyman. He's the evil one here. But if you look at it from a real life point of view, things are a little different. Because some rando pops into the city and now the homeless people have somewhere to sleep. The crime rate is going down, and this dude was sent from God. Like, that sounds pretty good to me. I don't know about you, but that sounds good to me. And again, I am hoping that finding out that he's actually murdering these criminals would change my opinion on him, at least a little bit, because I don't think people should be killed, especially for petty and drug-related crimes. Like, I'm not for that. So I'm just hoping that maybe I have enough sense in my brain to be able to clock that and be like, wait a minute, maybe I don't want to back this guy. But again, I can't say 100% I would pick up on that. And that's a little scary. It got me thinking. Because it is possible that my personal benefit of the situation would override my compassion or cloud my judgment. And that's pretty deep if you think about it. Because I find myself to be a very compassionate and open-minded person. But if I were a citizen of Gotham while this was going on, I don't know. Maybe my own personal, like, okay, this is great for me. Now I don't have to worry so much when I'm walking the streets. That might override my compassion for the criminals, which is a little difficult for me to admit to myself. But I gotta be honest. I just might fall into the cult. And there is an example of that in the book where someone takes Blackfire's cause, if you can call it that, and uses it to execute and justify his own personal vendetta about some guy. And this is the biggest spoiler I think I'll put in the story, but some guy gets murdered because he's a black man dating a white woman, and that's it. So this man is innocent, and he gets murdered along with the criminals that apparently deserve the death according to Blackfire. And obviously all that stuff is bad, and I don't agree with that stuff. But I'm saying, if I was just the Gotham citizen and I didn't know that specific case had happened, and I didn't think about the individuals that lives were being taken, I might just back up the dude who's taking those lives. And I fear I would have put myself in a situation where I'm backing up some guy who actually doesn't agree with my morals at all. And I probably wouldn't realize that until it was way too late, like so many people in the story. I think it's crazy, but I also really do appreciate the fact that a comic book was able to lead me to such deep self-reflection. This is why the world needs art. Because it is showing things to me about myself that I had no idea were actually there. It's like, it's not something I think about every day, but it is something that I will keep in the back of my mind now, that I am not immune to other people's BS, and I will not always be able to spot and see when I'm being manipulated. Which is spooky to think about, but it's also great to have awareness. Self-awareness is key. But on a lighter note, I did find it kind of entertaining to see Batman slip in and out of his sanity. Because we see him flip and flop between his old sober-minded analytical self and the scrambled mess that Blackfire turned him into. And sometimes that did make me giggle a little bit. I think the splotchy and gritty texture that the coloring has really complemented that part of the storyline, where everything's a little bit fuzzy and nothing is super clear. The visuals just have a really good effect on the story. And then of course there's the usual Batman comic stuff. Commissioner Gordon is out there being head of police, trying to figure things out. Batman has his gadgets and he gets a new Batmobile. And our boy wonder Robin is there for a friendly assist. So even though the subject matter had me self-contemplating and gave me a minor crisis, the book as a whole still has that comic book charm. And I don't want to give any more of the story away because I do want you to read it for yourself. I absolutely 100% recommend this book to any and everybody who will listen to me. Even if you're not big on comic books, the story is just that good. If you are big on comic books, I do suggest getting the DC Finest A Death in the Family collection. It has the cult story within it and then also some other really good stories. A Death in the Family storyline is also one that really had me on the edge of my seat. So I also recommend that one to the comic book fans out there. But if you're not interested in a bunch of stories collected into one book, they do have The Cult as a book on its own. I personally will be purchasing that. I usually stick to strictly ebooks because I do have limited space, but The Cult is 100% worth the shelf space that I'm going to give it because I want to smell that book. I want to feel the pages in my fingers. Hi, Carl. Say hi, Carl. Okay, I'll put you down. But yes, I am obsessed with that book. I think you should read it. I think your mom should read it. I think your grandma should read it. I think your nephew and niece should read it. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching the video. If you have any more comic book suggestions, let me know because I'm always down to read more comic books. It is a newly found love for me. So if there's some good ones out there that you think I would like, just let me know and I might check them out. So thank you and goodbye.